10 years ago, the Saudi Arabian economy was entirely tethered to a single commodity. Hydrocarbons funded the government, underwrote the social contract, and strictly dictated a rigid domestic structure. Then came Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the launch of Vision 2030. The mandate was a $1 trillion directive to force a rapid pivot away from oil and construct a post-hydrocarbon economy from scratch. A decade later, the 10th anniversary of that program reveals a jarring split reality. In 2026, the kingdom is simultaneously reporting celebrated, measurable economic victories right alongside the very public multi-billion-dollar collapses of its most heavily advertised megaprojects. The financial friction of this dual reality is now visible in the national accounts. The kingdom is facing a $44 billion national deficit, requiring nearly $58 billion in new borrowing just to maintain operations this year. So what did $1 trillion actually buy? To find out, we have to look past the state-sponsored public relations and conduct a mid-decade audit, separating the empirical, ground-level data from the spectacular fantasies. This line chart tracks Saudi Arabia's real GDP over the last decade, and it shows where the diversification effort actually worked. Non-oil sectors have steadily climbed and crossed a critical threshold, now constituting 55.6% of the real economy. The successes belong to the functional, everyday infrastructure, like the Riyadh Metro and the King Abdullah Financial District are operating smoothly today because they were built to serve existing domestic demand and accommodate real, multinational tenants. But the most profound shift driving this new domestic economy is demographic. Hundreds of thousands of Saudi women have entered the professional workforce, altering the structure of the national labor market. If we look at this data tracking labor trends, we see female workforce participation jump from a baseline of just 17% to over 35%, comfortably beating the government's own target schedules. Highly publicized cultural shifts, like opening cinemas and lifting the ban on female drivers, served a precise economic function. The state needed to mobilize a massive, untapped labor pool to staff its growing private sector, and these reforms removed the logistical barriers keeping that workforce at home. The elements of Vision 2030 that succeeded relied on conventional economic levers and genuine demographic needs. They built for populations that already existed. The projects that failed shared the exact opposite trait. They required non-existent technologies, hypothetical global markets, and populations that simply weren't there. The line was designed as a 170-kilometer mirrored utopia. Today, construction is suspended at just 2.4 kilometers, leaving a massive foundation in the empty desert. This cascading chart illustrates the financial contagion hitting the public investment fund. An $8 billion giga-project write-down and a $7 billion loss on Lucid Motors drained capital. Consequently, national construction contract awards collapsed by 60%. The money dried up. Entire sections of the kingdom's master plan are now paused. They stand as literal monuments to fiscal miscalculation, empty dirt lots waiting for funding that has been redirected elsewhere. Sovereign wealth can purchase millions of tons of concrete and endless hours of consulting fees, but it simply cannot mandate a science fiction metropolis into existence without a proven market to pay for it. The physical construction of this new economy required immense labor, and the audit of that workforce reveals a staggering toll. This map tracks the mortality of migrant laborers. Over 21,000 foreign workers have died, and 100,000 are missing. The ILO upheld a forced labor complaint, highlighting that 80% of these fatalities were highly suspiciously categorized as natural causes. The violence extended to the land clearance required for these massive footprints. To make way for the NEOM development, state security forces forcibly displaced the indigenous Hawitat tribe from their ancestral homes. When individuals resisted or protested the evictions online, the domestic response was absolute. Security forces killed one resident who refused to leave his home, while courts handed down executions and decades-long prison sentences to others simply for posting their opposition on social media. Saudi Arabia's economic modernization and rapid physical expansion were directly subsidized by the severe, systematic suppression of basic human and political rights. By early 2026, the era of the blank check officially ended. The Public Investment Fund approved a new strategy that quietly shelves the impossible renderings in favor of reality. The new mandate across the government is capital discipline. Billions of dollars are being rapidly redirected away from isolated desert utopias and toward tangible, ROI-driven sectors: AI data centers, advanced manufacturing hubs, and domestic mining operations. To guarantee foreign visitors and salvage international visibility, the state is now leaning heavily into conventional global events. Hosting Expo 2030 and the 2034 World Cup provides hard deadlines and proven crowds, avoiding the risks of trying to invent a new tourism market from scratch. What remains today is a fractured landscape. A functioning, modernized domestic state sits right alongside the permanent architectural scars of abandoned projects and the quiet, devastating human toll extracted in the courts and labor camps. The kingdom successfully built a diversified post-oil services economy, and it radically overhauled its domestic workforce. But it paid an immense fiscal and moral premium to learn the boundaries of its own wealth. The 10-year experiment ends with a brutal, expensive realization: economic reality and human limits will always outlast a public relations campaign.